So, in further addressing this issue of international interference of international observers, high commissioners, and ambassadors from Western nations who are interfering in our electoral process and trying to more or less hijack our democracy, I want to read this article from Kiter News that it's a feature by Lincoln Lewis. I'm just going to read the article, and the title is International Observers Are Not Arbiters to the Electoral Process in Guyana. The invited presence of the international community to observe and report their findings in our general and regional elections is not an invitation for them to become embroiled in or dictate our electoral processes during elections. It is not an invitation to disrespect our leaders, our people, and our institutions' ability to resolve our conflicts using legal and legitimate means at resolution, all of which the observers are welcome to report on and which can form evidential material in event of any election petition in a court of law. Events to the contrary suggests that the time has come in our dear land of Guyana when we must ask ourselves whether some observers are overreaching their mandates, taking us for granted, and or acting perhaps unintentionally inimical to the interests of all Guyanese. We must ask whether these behaviors are not in effect a transgression of our sovereignty under the guise of, quote, observation and reporting, unquote. This is even more concerning given that some ignore, are blinded to, and are unable to fix the many electoral disputes within their own country. Some are witnessing their laws upturned and violated daily, even as efforts to preserve same are ongoing with various degrees of failure. The social and political challenges that confront this nation are not new to the international community, but as they surface at election time, it seems clear that this community is just prepared to flex its muscle to make sure that the electoral process is, and in this particular electoral year, the numbers are to their satisfaction. Seemingly, they appear willing to compromise other important occurrences surrounding the electoral experience, which speaks to free, fair, and credible elections. We remind them that every single activity affecting the electoral environment is important. In this regard, the opposition invasion of GECOM, intimidation and disruption of election staff, threats to workers and police officers peacefully conducting their duties were not seen as cause for immediate condemnation by the international community. The lives and safety of innocent school children were not placed in jeopardy by I'll read that again. The lives and safety of innocent school children were placed in jeopardy by opposition supporters, and this was ignored by the international community. The selective concerns, and I will put it my way, the selective outrage surrounding the elections atmospheres are of concern. At the time of writing this article, there was no attempt to address this volatile environment, that is by the international observers or any of the international bodies. This is troubling. It is not that the international community is unaware of the ethnic tension and division in our society, particularly at this time. Thus, we not only expect of them to play a role in observing our elections, but also not to do anything that could be construed that they are only driven by numerical outcome. Note is also taken of Mr. Barajagdio's efforts at undermining the integrity of the process. If he had a concern, he could have raised same with GECOM as done before and where they were addressed. But he seems more interested in destabilizing the process by creating mistrust with reckless pronouncements at his press briefings and interaction with supporters, where he claims the PPP gave the international observers a tally of the results and they are purportedly using same as the authentic statements and demanding GECOM do a number of things based on said reference point. This is unacceptable. It is GECOM, the state agency responsible for conducting the election, whose results are supposed to be used following a specific process. It is a shame to hear the observers are pursuing GECOM and making initial statements to the public based on a document given to them by a contesting party. Under such circumstances, it was their responsibility, if they needed clarification, to sit with GECOM in search of same. Instead, they sought to behave like arbiters and not observers of the process. I am sure, had they done this in an amicable way, the two sides would have met and sorted out their differences. As observers have failed the process by making public statements that have incensed both sides of the political divide, they have failed us by immersing themselves as active participants to the chaos and confusion. Guyana has never witnessed this type of behavior by observers of the international community. As an independent sovereign nation, it is time we develop the capacity and maturity to resolve our problems among ourselves. It is time that President David Granger and Mr. Ifran Ali, the two major presidential candidates, start the process by sitting down to address the way forward, using administrative and legal procedures as necessary. And of course, it goes on to say the views expressed in this article are those of the author and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this newspaper. Once again, this was an article that was written on March 8, actually published on March 8, 2020 on Kiter News. This is a feature, Eye on Guyana, with Lincoln Lewis, and this was the article he wrote. And guess what? What he wrote is exactly the sentiment of any Guyanese who loves this country, any person in or out of Guyana who is from this country, that loves this country, that sees what's going on, and we see the international interference, and we want to call it out for what it is. So this is one article that was written to address that matter. So let us just keep this in mind as we move forward with the process.